You're listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast with Matt Tomasi and can be found at borntokickarse.com/episode 24.
Welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast, where you're introduced to the most fascinating people on the planet. Learn the ingredients of greatness that you can apply to your life. And now your host, Matthew Tomasi.
Today's podcast is brought to you by audible.com. Get a free audiobook of your choice and a 30-day free trial by visiting borntokickarse.com/audible. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. To download your free audiobook today, go to borntokickarse.com/audible. Again, that's borntokickarse.com/audible for your free audiobook. Do you know someone or know of someone who walks the walk and would like to hear them on the Born to Kick Arse podcast? They can be from any field, but they need to have an inspiring story that will help to motivate others to achieve their own goals. If you do, please head over to borntokickarse.com/suggest a guest and fill out the form. We'd love to hear from you. Josh LaJaunie is living proof of the power of a focused mindset. For most of his life, Josh was obese. At his heaviest, Josh tipped the scales at about 410 pounds, 185 kilos. In this interview, Josh talks about his slow progression from gym workouts to walking, then progressing onto slow jogging. After changing his eating habits to focus more on a plant-based diet as well as regular running, Josh's weight began to drop off. Josh has since lost over 200 pounds, half of his body weight, and completed a 100-kilometre trail run. Josh is currently training for a 100-mile ultramarathon. Enjoy the interview. Josh LaJaunie, welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm honored, flattered.
Yeah, so I've became aware of yourself through the Rich Roll podcast. How's your life changed since appearing on his podcast? Has a lot of people reached out to yourself to try and follow your inspirational story?
Yeah, lots of people. I mean, Rich, I know this is the title of your podcast is Born to Kick Us, Kick Arse. But it chokes me up, honestly, just a tad to know what Rich Roll just randomly reached out and did for me. I didn't even know it's what I wanted or needed in my life. And, here I was, just a guy who lost a bunch of weight and was starting to sort of scratch the surface on this running thing. And I just tweeted to Rich one day, a big thanks about how his book changed my life. And, it was one of the books that changed my life, but his was very profound, and his podcast to follow up reading his book was very profound in my sustainability and my fully adopting this new lifestyle. And the fact that he, noticed that I tweeted to him was awesome. And B, the fact that he decided to share my before and after, and then follow up with the email exchange, and then ultimately putting me on his podcast. I'm not like, he has some very famous people on his podcast, and I'm just a dude from Thibodaux, Louisiana, man. I'm nothing special. The only difference between me and the next guy is, or me and the next runner, is that I got really fat first before I started doing it, right? And so I didn't know that I wanted to put my story sort of out in the public realm. I didn't know that until Rich, I'd say, incubated that in me. Like, so he suggested it. He's like, just like Phil and Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, you could be you can be a voice for people who are struggling with the same thing that you've struggled with, and it seems like you've got a handle on it. And I mean, kind of in a way owe it to the universe to share your story and be open and inspire others to really get some traction in some of the areas that you've been able to gain traction. And so my life has changed pretty massively since that first Rich Roll interview, in that I speak publicly now from time to time. I'm invited to go to Dallas and speak with Rip Esselstyn this December. Like I've met amazing people. It's just been crazy what Rich has done for me just by putting his microphone in my face that time. That's it. It's amazing. It's beautiful, and it's changed my life and given me a whole new purpose and a whole new direction. And I honestly love it. I love it. I feel fulfilled.
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
good.
fulfilled. I feel like I make a difference. I feel like I'm leaving a legacy. I feel like I'm helping the people I love the most in the region that I love the most, and it's very, very special. I can't say enough how much I appreciate what he's done. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'm just looking through your photos on your Facebook page. Yeah, you're looking really good. You're in shape and you've really slimmed
Right.
down. Can you maybe tell us about your lifestyle growing up? Maybe just tell us about sort of where you grew up and, the food and stuff that
Yes.
you're into. And then what weight did you max out
Well,
at?
about
400
400, give or take. I'd say conservatively, between 405 and say 415 in that area, is where I maxed out. The highest number I ever saw on the scale, is about 397. But I had lost weight before I got that reading. Because I had a scale that just wouldn't go up that high, and I had been working out for like a month and a half maybe, and in the beginning weight came off really, really fast because I was so heavy. Weight came off really quickly, and so after about say a month and a half, 2 months in, I still weighed 397, and I could tell in my face and in my clothes that I had already lost a good amount of weight, right? So that's about where I was. I'd say just to hit it right in the middle, just say 410 is probably where I maxed out, right? Yeah.
So I'm just going to do a conversion. I'm just on Google just for the non-American
Yep.
listeners. 410 pounds is about 185 kilos. So that's you were a
Yeah.
big boy, maxed out. But yeah, tell us about your lifestyle growing up and
Sure.
where you
I'm
grew up.
from Louisiana. I don't know how familiar Australians are with the regions of the United States. I know maybe you think of Americans as just one type of person. I don't know, but we're in the South, and um, Louisiana is unique, really, among Southern states. Even we have a Bayou Cajun culture, and it's a little bit different. And if we're known for one thing globally, well, with the city of New Orleans and the Cajun culture, it's our food, man. It's what we do. It's what we put on display for the world to say, oh, that's the value that these people bring to the world is their cuisine, right? Their ability to make gumbo and jambalaya and crawfish pie and decadent desserts in the French Quarter, and beignets and all of these different things that we know how to do. And also another thing that we do really well is have a cocktail, make cocktails, drink alcohol, and enjoy, quote unquote, the good life, right? And so that's how I grew up. I grew up watching the adults do that. I grew up partying around a burner with a big pot in the yard, whether we were frying fish or making a gumbo or a jambalaya or boiling crawfish or whatever. And and the other thing that was always ever present with alongside of that was alcohol. It'd be beer and whiskey or whatever, and daiquiris. We have drive-through daiquiri shops here. It's what we do. Food and alcohol is like a huge part of our culture here. And so I was just your stereotypical Cajun kid, I guess. Growing up, I looked up to all of the adults that were participating in those things. And I wanted to be just like them, especially my grandfather. So I learned how to cook at an early age. I learned how to make gumbo. I learned how to ball crawfish and crabs. I know how to do all of that. I know how to fry fish perfectly. I know how to do all of those things that are like sort of prerequisites to being a coon ass, like, or is it just a colloquialism for a Cajun person, a swamp dweller, right? So I participated in all of those things heavily and proudly, I might add. And so over the years, it makes you a big boy. It makes you a big guy. My grandfather was about 370, 380 pounds my whole life. And I spent most of my childhood and I call my grandfather Bam Bam. So I spent most of my childhood wanting to be just like my Bam Bam. Physically, the way he acts, the way he talks, the way he tells jokes, the type of whiskey he drinks, the type of food he creates, all of it. I wanted to be just like him. Right. And so I spent my early years mimicking him and mimicking a lot of his friends and doing the camp, going to fishing camps, hunting camps, doing all of that stuff. And also there was a part in my life where football came into the mix. My grandfather played football. All of my uncles played football. And it was like a next step in your manhood journey was to become a football player. So I did that. And of course, I was a lineman, and being big and hefty was part of your toolbox, let's say, as an athlete when you're on the football field. So being a big guy was needed. So I was definitely embracing the idea of identifying as a big guy, both because it's what my grandfather was, and also because I was a lineman, I was a football player, and it made me valuable to a group of guys that I held close to, to me, and my teammates. So I grew up doing that. That was me. So it was like football and food and beer and having a good time, fishing camps and hunting camps and doing all of these things. And so that, in a nutshell, is my entire life, all the way up to, my early 30s. That's it. It was football and food and alcohol and having a good time, or like we say, le bon temps roulé. We were just letting the good times roll, and that's just kind of how we live. And that really sort of laissez-faire attitude when it came to like health was sort of how I got to a place where from a person outside the culture looking in might seem like it's such an extreme place to go, a big fat 400-pound guy. But it's not so uncommon here in the South, and especially here in South Louisiana.
So you're pretty tall as well,
Yes, I'm about 6'3.5".
So when you were sort of growing up and doing football, when you were younger, was this at high school?
Yeah. I played football in high school. I started playing football in elementary school in the third grade. No, I started playing football in the fourth grade. Yeah.
So were you, in terms of the size, like you're a big guy, like you got a big frame anyway,
Sure.
Pretty tall. Were you, in addition to, all the food that you're eating over the years and sort of gaining size, were you doing gym as well? Or was it just mainly just food?
It was a lot of just fat bulk. I did do a lot of working out, but only the requisite amount, right? And like what I mean by that is what the coaches dictated. There was not a whole lot of extracurricular um, working out done on my part. I mean, we had like little stints of time where I would work out voluntarily with my buddies, but those were always temporary little points in time. It was never really anything major. So yeah, to answer your question, I was strong. But I was never, and I would be, I was muscly. I wasn't like a bodybuilder or anything, but you could see my shoulders and my arms, and you could see that I wasn't just purely fat, but realistically, my BMI was up there, and I was mostly fat, even though I quote unquote held it well.
So during your actual football career through high school, there's a lot of running involved. Was your weight at that point, how sort of heavy were you at this point?
Well, in my high school days, I went from, man, shit, in junior high, I was 250, right? And then, so by the time I got to high school, because I was surprised one day at practice when I was in junior high. They had some Thibodeau high school coaches there. And lo and behold, my junior high coach, he said, you're one of the guys they're here to watch. And I was kind of flabbergasted. I was kind of blown away. So they were actually eagerly waiting my arrival at the high school because of my size. And I was just starting to understand that stuff in junior high. So in high school, I bulked up both with the weight room and with just getting bigger. And I was probably around, I'd say 280 to 295 for most of my high school football days.
Do you follow the UFC at all?
A little bit.
In terms of the weight, these numbers, these are big
right.
numbers. I know with the heavyweight division, there's the upper limit is 265, and I'm sort of using that as a bit of a
right.
baseline. Like guys like Brock Lesnar cut weight to get down to the upper limit of 265. Right. So, you're mentioning, at this point in your life, you're above 265.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite big.
Yeah. And that was normal. That was a normal weight for me. Like it's crazy to hear that. I know we're on like a certain arc here in this conversation, but just to kind of get off of chronological base for a second, when I first started to try to lose weight, my goal was to if I could just get back down to 280, 290, that would be good. Like that was a good, healthy weight for me. I remember looking at BMI charts and thinking, wow, according to my height, I should weigh about 190 pounds. That is impossible. There's no way. And we would laugh about it. I would tell my wife, could you imagine what I would look like at 190 pounds? Like, this is absurd. And it was just proof to me that those BMI charts aren't for everyone, right? So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. But I guess it's all about what normal is to you, yeah.
So all your mates growing up, were they big guys as well? Like, all your family and all your friends and stuff,
yeah.
Like on weekends, if you had barbecues and stuff, are they all
yeah,
large and overweight?
Yeah, I definitely was not. I was usually probably the biggest guy in the room, but not by much. Like I had tons, like, so that's what you talking about, 260? Man, 260 is the norm at sitting around, the deer camp or the fishing camp. I mean, that's not a huge guy here. And then think about it too. I'm a football player, so a lot of my friends, just sort of that little pool of people, is sort of self-selected to be big people, right? So I'm befriending a lot of fellow linemen and big guys, people I identify with. So when I do have a social gathering, it's gonna be a large contingent of of hefty fellas,
Did you ever have like eating contests
Yeah.
at all with your
Yeah.
friends? Like, if you had a barbecue or you're at a particular restaurant, for example,
Yep.
growing up, did you ever go toe to toe
Yep.
with your mates? Let's just go
That's
full
funny
on
that you asked that. Nobody's
um,
ever asked me that, but it absolutely, yes, I did. We used to have Whopper eating contests at
right.
Burger King, man. And so we would stall out at four. Four would be four
Four.
Whoppers would be about all you could handle. And we got
Jeez.
drunk one night. Me and a good friend of mine who played linebacker. He wasn't as fat as me, but that mother boy, he could eat just as much as me. He was a beast with the eating. But we went to Burger King, and this was back when there was a special, like there was a Western Whopper. So it had barbecue sauce and onion rings on the Whopper, right? Besides, it is just a lot of food. So anyway, I topped out, and my max was 5. I ate 5 of those Western Whoppers in one sitting one night, and so I won. Yeah, you won.
What about alcohol? How much sort of beers did you drink? Were you a regular drinker at all?
Yeah. Yes, man. We drank a lot. And so just to give you a picture of the volume, my brother and I, so when I mentioned that we would go to the camp a lot. So we'd go to the hunting camp or fishing camp, and depending on how many days we would go, my brother and I, our calculus for gathering alcohol was we needed 2 cases of beer per day. And this is me and my brother, because my brother was also a 400-pound guy. My brother's 2 years younger than me, and he's about 6'2". And so we like 2 giant guys, right? And so when we would go to Walmart to pick up all of our shit for the weekend, it would be the calculus was 2 cases of beer and a half gallon of Jack Daniels per day for the weekend. So now that was overkill, because we always shared our beer and whiskey, and we wanted to make sure we had plenty for ourselves. So, but man, we weren't off. And so what we wind up doing, we weren't off by far. What we wind up doing is if there was some residual at the end of the weekend, we would just leave it at the camp. So we would always have like a little emergency stockpile of beer and whiskey at the camp. But that was pretty much how we bought, was 2 cases a day for me and my brother. Now this is 2 folks, right? So 2 cases a day and a half gallon of Jack Daniels per day was pretty much it. So if we were going for the weekend, it was going to be two half gallons of Jack Daniels and at least 4 cases of beer. Yep.
So you're all
set. Yep. And get drunk as hell.
So when you were growing up, like at this point in your life, were you self-conscious about your weight?
Well, sure. Yeah, sure I was, but that was private. Like, I was definitely self-conscious about my weight, because guess what? You're a young man and you're interested in young girls. And when you are as fat as I was, of course there are girls that are interested, but there's a lot less. And so it's not like you can go around like some of your other more in shape friends and just kind of like, go chasing the ladies when you go out at nights in some strange locale. Like we'd go somewhere for a fishing trip or a hunting trip and wind up hitting the local scene. And, you know how young men do. And so, but as a big guy, it's not always awesome. A lot of the other guys that weren't so big and fat, it just kind of go and be very confident about approaching the opposite sex. Whereas somebody who's a giant, huge guy, is a little bit more reserved because of that quiet self-consciousness that you would never let your friends know that you're self-conscious about how fat you are. Cause that's kind of weak, but deep down, when you pass by the mirror, on the way to get into the shower when you're, 360 to 410 pounds. It's not a pretty sight, bro. It's not. And but it's not a manly thing to like not like yourself. So you just kind of stay quiet about that shit,
What about clothes? Was there an issue getting clothes at all? Like jeans and stuff?
That was a real pain in the ass because I used to wear it would depend on the manufacturer of the shirt. But if I was just buying t-shirts, I needed a 4 or 5X t-shirt. And you don't just pop in places and buy that. So Walmart shocker, handles big, giant, fat people clothes. But even at Walmart, most of the time they only go up to 3X or 4X. So a lot of times I wouldn't even be able to buy like t-shirts and stuff at Walmart. I would always have to find the local, and forget about it if I needed a belt. If I needed a belt or pants, I have to go find a big and tall man store somewhere, and it's going to be an excursion. And so I need to make sure that I pack all of my shit. I just can't, especially like if I'm going on a hunting trip, and so you have all of these specialized clothing items like camouflage jackets and chest waders if you're going duck hunting or something. So you can't, if you forget something like that, you can't just run up to the like local Academy sporting goods and buy that, because I'd have to order that stuff from it was a place called bigmanscamo.com or something like that. I used to order a lot of my big hunting gear online. So if I would get somewhere and forget something or be without something, it was time to get creative because there's no buying anything. Yeah.
So what about your food bill every week? How much sort of money were you spending on food alone? Was that
Yeah, it was a lot. It was and it was just like it was like a non-stop spending. So I really never really tallied it and said, boy, I'm spending way too much money on food. I never really thought of it that way. But looking back on it, it definitely took a lot of my free income that could have been going to something else away. And so it's because it's constant. Think about, going to the camp would be at least to that Walmart trip with the alcohol and all of the little Debbie cakes and the shit to make fried everything. Like, so we would have to have oil and flour and fish fry and like, and biscuits and eggs and bacon and butter and cheese and all of the different things that you eat to keep yourself big and fat. And you'd buy that in volume. So that Walmart trip would wind up being $300-400 most of the time. And that's just one trip. That's not counting all of the trips back and forth to the store, all of the every time you stop at a gas station and you spend, $5 or $6 on a soda and some candy and some beef jerky, every single time you stop somewhere, so it's like this, it's imperceivable almost, the money going out, because it's constant. It's all the time. You're spending a little here, a little there, a lot here, a lot there, going to a restaurant. So it's another thing that I've learned since I eat healthier now. My tab at a restaurant is way less expensive, not only for the food, but because I don't have like this big alcohol tab to go along with it. And I'm not buying a decadent dessert after the meal. So just a meal between my wife and myself in the city in New Orleans might be a couple $100 back then. Whereas now we regularly go and sit down at an Ethiopian restaurant or at some Asian restaurant where we might just get steamed vegetables and steamed rice, and our bill's like $17.
All right, yeah,
it's crazy.
Good. So tell us about when you topped out at 400. How old were you at that point, and was there like a light bulb moment or a catalyst or something that sort of went off in your mind and you sort of thought, oh, enough's enough, I need to sort of drastically do something different and sort of dig deep and, change your direction in life? Was there? Can you
Yeah,
talk
sure.
about that?
I mean, it goes back a little bit to what I was talking about, how you quietly dislike yourself and how, so you keep that as almost a secret. It's not a very well kept secret, but it's still like, it's a secret. People, because it kind of bleeds out from time to time that you're very unhappy with how fat you are. And then people try to help you by going, well, just do something about it, and I get it. But but being steeped in that wish to get to look different, to not be fat for decades, man, was was uh was a big part of my change. Like, so, and I don't know how to tell people anything quicker. Like, it was just, I wished for a long miserable time in my life that I wasn't so fat. Now, when we getting down to the nitty gritty, as far as the day or the real the moment of change for me was, we talked about my football for a minute. And long story short, I had gone to college on a football scholarship, lost the scholarship, dropped out of school, flunked, never got my degree. And so I went back to school at about 29 years old as a freshman, had to start all over. And what was happening was, at about 33, I was getting ready to graduate. And I knew that I had these big business, because I was a business major, and I knew I had these business presentations to do in front of like this like big auditorium setting, right? And I was very self-conscious because I was the biggest I'd ever been in my life. I could barely fit in any of the desks. And the idea of putting on a suit, tucking in my shirt, putting a tie around my big fat neck, sweating, all of the stuff that comes with being big, being a fat guy in a suit, was just haunting me. It was haunting. And so the spring semester of my senior year in 2011, a buddy of mine just happened to call me one day out of the blue, and say, "Hey, man, I'm about to join the gym. I need a partner. You want to come with me?" And that was it. So I did. I started going with him because I was nervous about how I was going to look in a suit later on that year, right? So I wanted to not look so fat and sloppy and out of shape in a suit for my senior capstone course presentation at the end of the year. And so that's what really initiated the action in this last weight loss stint, because I've lost probably over 80 pounds probably 3 times in my life, and this time it stuck, I think, just because of that. Because one, I was approaching this with a little bit more of an educated mind. Two, I was doing it for a different reason. I was doing it for me this time. I got married in 2008, so I already had the girl. I was lucky enough to find a girl who was not grossed out by a big fat guy and actually kind of liked me as a big fat guy. She loved me. I was her big teddy bear, and she still does. That's a whole nother story, but she had to get used to a new physical me. But anyway, yeah, so a lot of things changed in my life. Another thing was, my New Orleans Saints won the freaking Super Bowl in 2010. Turned my world upside down. I was like, man, anything is possible. Here I am getting a degree. I'm married to a beautiful girl. My Saints have a Lombardi trophy. Like, okay, it's my turn to step up to the mic and do something impossible. And that started to drive home in that year, that 2011 year, when I started working out. The weight started coming off. I became concerned with how much did I actually weigh, because I really had no idea for months. And that's when I found out I still weighed 397 after months of trying. And so, and that's where that 2011 year, that's where the inertia really sort of began for this whole journey, right?
And your mate, invited you to gym that time. Was he a big guy as well?
No. He's just a normal guy who was getting a little doughy around the edges and wanted to kind of slim up and fix it.
So in addition to the gym, the regular gym workouts and you're starting to get a bit more active and dropping a bit of weight, when did your approach to food start to change? And, you started to eat a bit more cleaner and adopt more of a plant-based diet? When did that sort of kick in?
No, that happened. I lost 100 pounds before I ever even started messing with any of that. I lost 100 pounds the same way I had lost those, 80 pounds 3 other times in my life, right? I did it the same old way. Watch your carbs, eat tons of chicken breast, all of that normal stuff, that quote unquote normal stuff that people do. I did paleo for about 2 months. So I stayed meat. As long as I didn't have white stuff on the plate, as long as it was all brown pieces of flesh, it was a healthy meal. That's how I looked at it. And so that worked. That worked until I got to about that 100-pound mark, and I just started kind of floating around in that same area. I just wouldn't go down below 300. I'd be 290 to 305, and things just weren't changing. And in retrospect, what I had actually done is just change my diet from that of a 400-pound man to that of a 300-pound man. And you can't get to be a 190-pound man with a diet of a 300-pound man. And so I slowly came to that realization, because of the fact that I started picking up running. So I didn't research how to change my food at first. What I researched was how to change my workout efforts, what I was doing in the gym. Let's change that, right? And so, because I know I'm right on food, because meat is good. Meat is good for you. Meat is where you build muscle, and muscle's how you burn fat. So I don't really need to mess with my food. I know what I'm doing in that area. Let me work on what I'm doing physically. Let me adjust that. So what I started doing was, I started realizing, okay, 3 sets of 10 at the gym, where I just crank out 3 sets of 10, and I don't ever really get my heart rate up. I'm not really sweating very much, but I'm getting sore and building mass and getting strong. Let's try a different approach. Let's do some circuit training. So I started introducing circuit training. So I would do 3 sets of 10 on one thing and 3 sets of 10 on the other thing, and then never really let myself have a break. And I'd be sweating and dripping, sweating profusely. I was like, and that was working. I was like, oh, this is doing right. And so what else can I do? And so I looked into to running. I had read in a magazine article somewhere, I can't remember, it might have been Men's Fitness or something, about how running is a perfect fat burning activity. And so I was like, okay, well, that's what I need to do. I just want to burn fat, hold on to this muscle mass that I already have. But if I could just melt this blanket of blubber off of me, then, I'll be an in shape guy. So I started picking up running, little bit at a time. I, just walk jogging at first, and on the treadmill, and I'd mix treadmill and elliptical, and then I graduated to kind of moving it outside, and then one thing led to the next. This is in 2011, late 2011, right before graduation, which was December, and to that point I was able to run. I was running 1 mile after my workout every day, after I would do some cardio equipment. So be it elliptical or bike or treadmill inside. Then as a finisher, the way I would punctuate every gym visit was I would run 1 mile as fast as I could and try to get it done in under 12 minutes. That was my goal. And so, man, that 12-minute mark was just so taunting. I just couldn't get under 12 minutes. I get 12:05 and 12:06 and 12:01. I just couldn't get that under 12 minute in that 1 mile. And then slowly but surely, what I started doing instead of worrying about that was I would start going for 2 miles instead, or 1.5 miles. And then I started stretching out the distance to where I got out to about 4 miles, where it was slow, but it was 4 miles. And so I signed up for the Crescent City Classic in New Orleans, which is like an iconic 10K in the city of New Orleans. And I'm a huge Saints fan, huge New Orleans fan, huge Crescent City Classic fan now. And so I signed up for that race with my buddy who was going to the gym with me. And so that really sort of sent me down the rabbit hole, so to speak, of running, because that race just tied it all together for me. Like, I was just in love with running now. Like, it hurt like a son of a bitch. I was tired. I felt demoralized. They had ladies passing me in strollers in the last 2 miles. It took me like an hour and 40 minutes to finish that first 10K, but I did it. I finished 6.2 miles. I did it, and it gave me something inside that was irreplaceable. That was like, wow, I've never felt this accomplished. I feel very tired. I feel like I could do better, but I never felt this accomplished. And so that's kind of where the love of running came in. And so the whole next year, which was 2012, I spent never really adjusting my food. I'm still working on just trying to be a better runner now, right? So I'm still dealing with, eating lots of meat. Meat is good, bread is bad, that sort of mentality food-wise. But I'm becoming more and more interested in this running thing, and I had committed to try to do the next Crescent City Classic in under an hour. And so I was training for that, and a buddy of mine gave me the book Born to Run. Early 2013, I think. Yeah, it was early 2013, and I was reading Born to Run as I've read about half of it before the race and about half of it after the race in 2013, which I did get my sub 1 hour 10K in 2013. And I learned of like Scott Jurek. I learned of what ultramarathons were and all of that stuff. That book, Born to Run, is the first domino that fell in me, like, starting to really change my food, right? That was the very first crack in the dike to like a massive nutritional change in my life.
So with that book, did you then start to incorporate sort of more veggies and fruit into your diet? Like, from that point?
I was toying with it. I was like, well, I don't need to get rid of everything. I understand it as more fruits and vegetables are good. So it really kind of got me off of the carbs are bad thing. So it was like a slow transition. I was like, yeah, but this Scott Jurek guy, he's a different animal. He's, blah, blah, blah. And then, I can't remember the exact, order in which it happened, but after the Born to Run thing, we committed to eating clean, right, for Easter Sunday, which that's the Crescent City Classic is always the Saturday before Easter Sunday. And Easter Sunday, you have, it's a huge Catholic society down here, so Lent is a big deal. Even though we're not very religious at all, it's just like a social thing to participate in. To us is, so me and my wife, we decided that for the 40 days of Lent, we're just going to eat clean. That's what we're going to do. We're going to eat clean. And so we started going with, grass-fed beef or free-range chicken and like all of those types of ideas. No processed food. And then that's the first step in getting a lot more raw fruits and vegetables into the diet. That was the very first step. So that 40 days of us, quote unquote, eating clean was kind of where the actual food change started to happen. And at that same time, I'm moving on from Born to Run to now I'm reading Eat and Run, Scott Jurek's book. Then I'm reading, and then slowly but surely I'm starting to like buy in, and I'm letting go of the free range chicken and the grass fed beef and the pork and the other things. I'm starting to let go, loosen my death grip on the meat, because it's such a big part of your identity, so slowly but surely started to loosen my grip on the meat. I read Rich Roll's book at that point, Finding Ultra, and that was like, and his book doesn't even tout itself in the blurb or anything as a plant-based athlete at all. It's just, I was intrigued by this ultra marathoning thing, by this ultra endurance stuff. And so that's why I read his book. And then lo and behold, boom, he turns plant-based too. I was like, well, damn. So, and then all around that same time, I'm, watch Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead on Netflix, and Forks Over Knives, and Food Matters, and Hungry for Change, and King Corn, and like Frankensteer, like all of these things. I'm just going down the rabbit hole, right? And I'm like, okay. And that's how it happened in 2013. It didn't take long. Once it clicked, it was all gone. It was not a real long, slow transition. Now to go from getting rid of meat and dairy to eating the way I eat now, that was a long transition. Because in the beginning, it was a lot of, well, if it's vegan, I'm going to eat it. So it was a lot of cookies and a lot of different types of vegan processed stuff in the beginning. But I still lost a ton of weight at that time. And that's how I lost the other 100 pounds was after I'd adopted all of that stuff. Yeah.
So how, at this point, around 2013-ish, you're still into running, and you've adopted a cleaner way to eat. What about your friends and family? How were they reacting to your change of direction in terms of food and exercise? Were they?
Because it's not just food, like, just like I said at the beginning of this conversation, that's how we identify our region globally, is the food, right? So it's not just changing food. That's a big deal to us. A big deal to us. When you say, oh man, you're not putting sausage and chicken in your gumbo anymore. Like, that doesn't make sense to people. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't register. Like, how? That's like, eating cereal without milk, right? Crazy town. What is wrong with you? And so when I first started to do all of these things, I was alone, right? I was alone, especially when I went fully plant-based, because I just decided to do that. I forget exactly when, but I remember the day I told my brother, I said, Dustin, I'm going to stop eating meat and dairy. I'm going 100% plant-based. I'm going to try it for 30 days, and I'm going to go from there. And he's like, what?
Just
didn't compute. So I did it, and 6 months later, everybody sees the change in me, and I'm like, I'm not quiet about it to them. I'm definitely wanting them to come on board because I know it'll make them healthier and happier and lighter and leaner and fitter and all of these different things. And so 6 months later, my whole family slowly but surely is coming on board, you know, and so my family, my immediate family, now we're all in it together, right? We're all in it together. Now that next concentric ring outside of my immediate family, that includes like friends and acquaintances, that's a little bit more of a difficult group, because I feel like I feel like I am judged sometimes, as, you know, being too much with, quote unquote, too much with all the plant stuff and all of that. Right.
Like
Like
you've
I was
lost
like,
it.
oh yeah, well, of course you lost weight. You're starving yourself. You're only eating plants. That doesn't even, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, but a lot of my friends and running friends are on board and understand the things that I've read and educated myself with to bring me to this conclusion, right? It's not just some whim. It's not just some dude said, it's not like Rich Roll said, you should only eat plants, and I'm so infatuated with him that I'm gonna just do whatever he says. No, there's a whole bunch of soul searching and reading and researching that I've done to come to these conclusions. I'm not following anyone. This is deep. And it makes sense to me that this is the correct thing for the organism, human organism, given the way we are able to procure food, the way we're able to digest food and chew food, and all of these different things. It just makes sense to me that this is what nature intended for this organism to do for fuel. So I'm comfortable in that now. But a lot of the people that I grew up with my whole life and care about a whole lot, sort of still kind of just roll their eyes at how, quote unquote, extreme I've gone, right? Yeah.
So have you ever, like even today, you know, just randomly, you know, you're out somewhere, you know, at the shops, or you just sort of randomly, have you ever randomly bumped into an old friend that you hadn't seen for 15 years? Yeah. And then have they just been completely shocked at your transformation? Yeah. Have you ever sort of been through those sort of situations?
Yep. It's a lot. It doesn't have to be 15 years either. It's somebody, if I hadn't seen somebody for 5 years, they won't know who I am. And so sometimes they'll see my face and they'll sit there and then it'll register because the whole rest of the picture doesn't match, right? You can look in my eyes and see right in the middle of my face that I'm Josh. But it takes a while for it to come like the full picture. But one thing that has kind of helped with that is just my presence on social media. So a lot of people will see me in, you know, the new version of me online, even if they haven't seen me in 5 or 6 years. They'll see the new pictures of the new me online, and then maybe they'll see me out in public somewhere, and then they'll be able to recognize me like that. But for those who do not do Facebook and the social media thing, then this happens because there's some older guys that I know that don't do all of that. You know, I just saw one last week at the doctor, and it took him about, I knew who he was. He didn't know who I was. I didn't really make a big deal out of it. I just sat down, and it took him about 5 or 10 minutes before it soaked in. And he was like, holy shit, that's you. And I was like, yep, that's me, man. And so but yeah, it's something I'm used to. It's almost like for a while there, because I've been minus 200 pounds for a while now, you know. But when it was still sort of new, because I lost a bunch more weight real quickly after I went plant-based and really was doing a lot of running. And so for a while there, it was like it was almost like wearing a costume, because, you know, people just wouldn't know who the hell I was. Now it's pretty known that Josh looks like a different person. And so everybody's kind of you know, aware of the massive change. Yeah.
So you mentioned, you know, you did a couple of 10K runs, you know, early days. If we sort of fast forward to the end of last year, your running has progressed somewhat, from the 10Ks. And did you do sort of any sort of half marathons or marathons, after that?
So I was talking about, so that after I did that sub 1 hour 10K where I read Born to Run, that year is when I started to flirt with the half marathon. And after I did my first couple of half marathons, that's when I decided to commit to my first full, which was in 2014. And then in 2014, I did 3 marathons, and I was like, I like this distance thing. It's really cool, and it just puts you in touch with yourself in a way that the shorter runs don't, where it just makes you just go completely inside your soul and dig out everything that you've got to just keep putting one foot forward, one foot in front of the other. And then in 2015, I did my first ultra marathon. I did my first 50K in February 2015, and then so I did that, and then I just slowly progressed through 2015 to last October. I ran my first 100K, which is my longest race to date. I did 100K on October 3rd last year, and it was crazy, man. There were many points in that race where I just went in all of the things that have taken place in my life. The whole narrative just kind of hits you all at once, and you realize, like, dude, I'm in mile 45 right now. I'm in mile 45 and I'm still going. I'm fine. I'm okay. Look at what you've done, Josh. And because in ultra marathons, especially the longer distances, you wind up, and in the later miles, you're going to be by yourself almost the whole time, right? And so, especially, if you're trying to race, and so if you're kind of towards the front of the pack, now this is a small race, so I happen to be towards the front of the pack in my 100K, and so I was completely alone for the last 50K, pretty much. I was just all by myself, so it was a lot of time to think in that suffering, painful part of that ultra marathon, and I'm just thinking about how far I've come. And so honestly, there was a lot of tears shed in that thing, man. There was a lot of tears shed, a lot of moments with myself that are just very special. And to get that mileage down was beautiful.
Yeah, that's the thing with ultra marathons. You get to a certain point where you're really exposed. Right. The real you becomes almost like you're naked in a sense. Did you ever feel as though you wanted to pull out of that particular 100K? Was there a particular time where you remember that you're at your lowest point?
Not even a little bit. Of course, I remember my lowest point in that race, but pulling out wasn't even on close to the radar. Wasn't even close. But yeah, I remember my low points in that race. I remember my low points in every ultra marathon that I've done, and the low points are as bad as they suck. Those are the reasons that I think I keep going back, because the low points are what make the high points relevant. It just by comparison, by contrasting the two, it makes the good feel so much better when you fight through that really shitty, bad area. And it just teaches you something. A bigger life lesson to me is, like, I've seen myself in a 50K be in mile 21, like standing against a tree trying to get cramps out of my calf, going, how in the hell am I going to go 10 more miles? It just took me 20 minutes to do the last mile. How in the hell am I going to finish this thing? And then you get through it, and next thing you know, it's mile 31, and you're running as hard as you can to the finish line, and it's all over with, and you got the medal around your neck, and everybody's high-fiving, and you're good, and you look back at it, and you look at that low point, and you go back and you remember to what your mindset was in that low point, and because it was over at that point in your brain. If you had, and nobody would have blamed you for quitting, but you didn't, and you fought through, and now it's over with, and it's just a little blip on the radar screen of the whole. And it just teaches you, like, no matter how bad it gets, just keep putting that next foot forward, You're going to come out of that area, and you'll be flying high soon again, just by sheer perseverance, And that's what's beautiful about the ultra marathon. Because there's the swings from barely moving to running really hard are huge. Whereas when you're marathoning, you're on a consistent surface, you're on a road, you've been pace training, and your marathon effort is you're going to have peaks and valleys in your marathon effort, but the peaks and the valleys in your marathon effort are a lot closer together. That it's smoothed out. If you looked at it on a chart, your pace chart is smoothed out. But if you look at an ultra marathon, man, it's a lot more volatile as far as how far your best mile is from your worst mile. And when you just talking sheer speed. And so I think in between those two, there's just a whole world of discovery, self-discovery, self-discovery, and an opportunity to become friends with yourself, to become an asset to yourself. It's beautiful. It's great.
Now, the 100K, is that it for you, or are you going to step up to something further than that?
Yeah, well, I've done 100. I've signed up for a 100-miler in September. So that's what I'm training for right now. I'm actually still sitting in my truck from my morning run this morning. I have September 3rd in Pensacola, Florida. I'm running the Bear Bait 100-mile race. And I mean, not Bear Bait, damn it. Wildcat 100. I knew that didn't sound right. I ran the Bear Bait 50-miler in January this year. Loved it. It was a fun time. So I'm going back to that same little area and run my 100-miler. But I picked September because I have a couple of buddies of mine who've done their 100-milers, and I've paced for them. And both of them, it was cold through the middle of the night. And man, I don't want to do cold. I think I would just rather deal with trying to get enough hydration and electrolytes and deal with cramps, and I don't want to fight the cold. So I think I would rather fight the heat. So we'll see. We'll see. So that's what I'm doing. September 3rd, it should be a good hot 100-mile race in Florida. But that's my next step.
No,
yeah, that's my next step.
Yeah, no, the 100-miler is a real test. You sort of need to break it up into like the day section, and then there's the night section. And you do have your sort of your smaller sections during the day and during the night. But it is an interesting experience. When you've run through the whole day, and then the sun's starting to set, and then you sort of really need to adjust your mindset and now start to prepare yourself for the night section. It is pretty good.
Yep.
It's a pretty good feeling that, when you sort of head into the night, it's sort of now you got the night adventure part ahead of you.
That's what I've been practicing for. I ran through the night last weekend. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before. I ran 26 starting at midnight, and ran through the night for that. And then this weekend we're doing for I'm part of a ultra runner group here in Louisiana called Louisiana Ultra Runners. So they're putting on a 10-hour event Saturday night. So we'll start at 8 p.m. Saturday night and run till 6 a.m. Sunday morning. So I'm trying to get my mind around that running all night thing. And so, yeah, that seems, because that's a big shift in the brain. Yep. Yeah.
So far in your life, you've lost over 200 pounds, you've run 100K ultra, and you're working towards a 100-miler. What's been your proudest moment? Is there like a particular moment that you're most proud of that really stands out in your mind?
Yeah. It's going to sound, I don't know, but I'll tell you that I was talking about that bear bait 50 miler in January. I'd have to say that, that is probably the proudest moment I've ever had as a runner, period. Because I wound up coming in first overall in that 50-mile race. And that was a very emotional moment for me. I just thinking about, now look, I won a 50-miler, but it was not because I was blazing. It was just because some of the fastest people that could have run that race that day either ran a shorter distance that day because they're training for something else, or because a couple of the guys that were on Ultra Sign Up that were a lot faster, that would have done that 50-miler a lot quicker, just didn't show up for one reason or another that day. But anyway, whatever the reason, I won that day. And that was powerful. I mean, I cried because it was a 4-mile loop. And my brother told me that I was in the lead when I came in for that second to last loop. My brother was there. And my brother's also lost 100 pounds. He hasn't quite adopted the running quite as much as I have. And he hasn't quite gone as far on the food strictness as I have. But my brother's also lost 100 pounds. And so he was there with me, crewing for me for that race. And as I popped out of the woods on that second to last loop, he told me that I was in the lead, and I just broke down. I broke down and started crying. I want to cry right now just talking about it, but and then my brother snapped me out of it. He's like, you don't have time for that right now because you got 4 miles left. And the guy hasn't quit or dropped out of the race. So you need to keep going or he'll catch you. And so that's what, that was a very proud moment. I finished that. By the time I got to mile 3 in that last 4-mile loop, my brother had walked up against traffic on the trail and found me, and he ran in with me for the last mile of that 50-mile win. That was a powerful thing.
Yeah,
that was a powerful
good.
thing. Yeah, it was just a proud moment for me. Yeah.
Just on advice, if you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Josh LaJaunie and give him some advice, what would you tell him?
I know what I would like to tell him, but he would not listen. I would like to say, hey, fat ass, wake up, listen to me. Pay attention. It matters. It matters. Stop doing all of the things that you're doing and stop trying to squeeze enjoyment out of life through a whiskey bottle or a box of fried chicken, and start trying to squeeze enjoyment out of life through your physical connection with the planet and the universe, through covering ground and spending time with Mother Nature. You're on the right track. You're very close. You do like to be out in the wide open wilderness, out in the Gulf of Mexico or out in the woods. You're close. You're very close. But you need to embrace your physical body in a way that will keep you from winding up like these older guys you're looking at that are dying of cancer and heart disease and all of these different things that are dying. They died all around me while I was, trying to be just like them, right? And so that's what I would like to tell him. But I have a feeling that 20-year-old me would want to kick my ass and probably not hear a word of it. So what I should probably tell him is, hey, 20-year-old me, this is the 40-year-old you. And just know this, it will get a lot better. I love you very much. And I think maybe that's the message that I need to give to that 20-year-old me.
Yeah, well, you got an incredible story, and you're living proof that the power of self-belief and being able to turn your life around from almost what seemed like a hopeless situation. You've dug deep, and you've taken baby steps. All these baby steps that you've taken from that 400-pound guy to where you're at today. It's an incredible story, and it's an incredibly inspiring story that you're living out right now, and you're giving inspiration to heaps of people, even myself. Like, I'm on the other side of the world, and I stumbled across your story online, and you're definitely making a difference. You're showing by example that you can do it.
That blows my mind, and it all started because I read Finding Ultra. I wouldn't be talking to you today if I hadn't actively sought information about what could I do, because I was looking for inspiration myself, and so it's beautiful, it's mind-boggling, and I am very, very grateful for you being interested in me, for Rich being interested in me, for people taking my story as inspiration and changing their lives. Those people have no idea how that just dumps fuel on the flame, man, and keeps me on fire. It keeps me on fire, and I appreciate it. I appreciate that you aren't just sitting on the sofa, like, theoretically inspired by me, but inspired by me in such a way that it spurs action within you. That's beautiful, and I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, it is. It's like a drug, isn't it? It's and I'm actually looking at your Facebook page now, and you're one of the guys on the main sort of cover art picture, Marshall Ulrich. He's an absolute legend.
He is. Yes, he is.
Where
that
was
in
taken?
Leadville a couple weeks ago. I have a friend of mine who knows me through that Rich Roll podcast, and we've become friends online. And he's a very, very nice guy, and he knows Marshall personally, and he crews for Marshall at Marshall's Badwater. I think this year might be Marshall's last year at Badwater. But anyway, long story short, my friend flew me up from here to Leadville because he wanted me to meet his friend Marshall. And I wanted to meet him too. And he wanted me to run the race that he was running. And so I did the Leadville Heavy Half that Saturday. I got to Leadville 10:30 Friday morning. Ran the Leadville Heavy Half with about 35, I think it was maybe 3,200 feet of elevation gain, and ran that up to the top of Mosquito Pass. That was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful race. And then met Marshall. I met David Clark, who's another awesome ultra runner who's lost massive weight and overcome alcohol addiction and drug addiction and a lot of other things, and plus lost 150 pounds. He's run Badwater several times, Leadville several times. He's a beast with it. I was able to just go and hang out with these guys for a weekend, and it was pretty damn amazing. It was pretty amazing, pretty cool to hear somebody like Marshall Ulrich tell me that he thinks he's like, dude, I love your story. It's awesome. He just made me feel really good. He said, you're doing really well and blah, blah, blah. It was talk about just some, affirmation there, right?
Yeah. That's really good. And whereabouts can people find you online and follow your progress, as you work towards the 100 miler and even beyond that? Where can people sort of say hi and reach out and
Facebook obviously is a great place. I have a Facebook page. I'm rapidly approaching my friends limit on my personal page. So my name, which is Josh LaJaunie, LaJaunie, on any of the social media. You can. I'm on Instagram a lot, Snapchat, whatever, all of them. I enjoy it. And I have a website. It's my name, all one word, joshlajaunie.com. And I have a lot of my race reports from that 100K, from my first 50K, on my website and my on my blog. So if someone is interested in drilling down more into each one of those races, go to the website. I have some self-education tools there as well for people to try to educate themselves on what real nutrition is and how the human should be eating and some pretty cool TED Talk videos and other YouTube videos by some doctors that I respect and whose ideas I've adopted and implemented in my life. And so just with my name online, you'll be able to find me and keep up with me and hook up with me and message me and ask me questions. I'm an open book, man.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, thanks again for your time and good luck with the 100 miler. And it's a great story, and I've definitely been inspired from talking to you and hearing about the struggles that you've been through and how you've overcome them. It's
hey man, I appreciate the interest, and I'm completely, like I said, I'm completely honored and flattered. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks again for your time, and good luck with everything, and we'll catch up again some point.
All right, brother. Peace.
You've just been listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast at borntokickarse.com. If you liked what you heard and want more, please subscribe on iTunes. Give a 5-star rating and a Kick Arse review. This really helps to boost our presence and continues to allow us to introduce you to the most fascinating people on the planet. Welcome aboard, and catch you next time.